This is my third attempt at a live stream. The first two have not gone so well. I'm learning new technology, new software, and I hope I'm not driving you too crazy with these live streams. But I'd like for them to be a regular component of my activity on this channel here, The Artful Painter. My name's Carl Olson, by the way, and this is The Artful Painter. I'm on a mission, a journey to learn how to paint, and I invite you along with me on that journey. And this week's been quite an interesting, well, not this week, the week before was quite interesting. It was jam packed with activity. I was recording podcast episodes for The Artful Painter. I attended a workshop with artist Christine Lashley, a fantastic painter. She works both in watercolors and water soluble oil colors. So, very interesting demonstration there. I was invited by Lillian Ashley, who is a co founder of the Olmsted Plein Air Invitational. Very generous. I really appreciate having that opportunity to attend that demonstration by Christine Lashley. I also attended a demonstration by artist Scott Christensen at the Booth Western Art Museum in Cartersville. That was fantastic. It was from 9 a.m. in the morning or 8:30 a.m. in the morning to 4 p.m. that afternoon. So it was a full day of watching art in the making, art as a performance art. And then I also attended the opening of Georgia artist John Cleveland, also at the Booth Western Art Museum. What a fantastic painter he is, and a pleasant surprise because I'd never heard of him before, but I was really impressed by his work. So I'm going to show you some things that I learned from all three of these events and share some other things as well. So I hope this goes okay. First time the camera failed, and this time, the second time, screen sharing failed. It may happen again. I don't know. Let me know if you're watching. I don't see anybody watching it at this time, which is good. It makes me less nervous. But hey, if you join, that's great. It'll be okay. So let's go into the presentation that I have here. I took some photos and I just put them in Keynote so that we could see them. So this is I'll talk a few minutes about Scott Christensen's demonstration. This was on Friday, January 18 at the Booth Western Art Museum. Scott Christensen is a fantastic artist. His work, along with Quang Ho, was on display for a few months there at in the temporary exhibition room in the booth. It was just incredible to see this artwork. So naturally, he's an artist that I wanted to see at work. He started off the presentation by saying, "Be comfortable with being uncomfortable." This resonates with me because I'm uncomfortable every time I face the canvas, the hardboard, go out plein air painting, attend a workshop. In fact, it seems like the more I attend workshops and demonstrations, the worse I get as a painter. Not because of the artist doing it, but it's an intimidating mess. And I'm hoping at some point there's a turnaround because I'm just going deeper and deeper and deeper in a hole. And I want to start crawling out with stuff that's, I can say, wow, I really like that. So, but that's not exactly what he was talking about, but that's what went through my mind when he said it. Some of his notions are probably different than what most of us have read in the art books and in other workshops. So it's good to have an experienced, accomplished painter like Scott kind of bust some of our assumptions there. One of the things he encouraged us to do was to approach landscape painting as if it is a still life. Really, the rules are the same. A beautiful still life is arranged. It is orchestrated by the artist, and the landscape can be done the same way. Your painting is not a literal interpretation of what's in the landscape. If you look in the left-hand side where you see Scott, he's holding a custom-made or a homemade sketchbook. It's made out of 80-pound, I think, 80 or 90-pound craft paper, and he had the craft paper bound in a spiral ring notebook like this. And what he does is he takes that notebook and he sketches out numerous ideas in developing a painting. And this is an important lesson that he drove home to us. He says you need to spend more time developing an idea instead of diving right in to the act of painting. Otherwise, there will be too much chaos in your painting. And I have to admit, this is an area that I need to give more attention to. And so it was a good takeaway from this presentation. He says that he got into a little bit of the nuts and bolts, not a whole lot, but he did say when he begins a painting, he starts with a fast drying alkyd-based white paint, and then towards the end of the painting, he migrates towards using titanium white. So I thought that was an interesting little tidbit there. And this was very true as we watched him. It was fascinating. He says, as I'm painting, I constantly adjust shapes, add spots of highlights to see how they relate to the rest of the painting, and then add modeling that won't necessarily stay in the painting. And so you would see him do that. There'd be a dab here and a dab there, a shape created here, but then it would soon be erased. But those things worked as milepost, if you will, in the painting. He said painting is putting together an abstract puzzle. There's lots of questions to ask when you're painting. How do these shapes relate? The colors, the color temperature, all of these things. Many questions that you don't ask just at the beginning, but throughout the entire painting process. Interesting point that he made that I thought was really good. He says, I'm not a fan of a painting having one focal point. Now, this doesn't necessarily invalidate things like rule of thirds or golden mean or sacred geometry or whatever other quote unquote scientific construct there is for devising compositionally pleasing paintings. But if you look at a Scott Christensen painting, what that painting does is it invites you. Your eye will rest on a spot, explore, and then you move on to another place to explore. And I think this is a beautiful concept. So we don't want to be stuck to the tradition of rule of thirds. It's a useful construct, but it's not the end all of painting. I think this is what makes an artist, is when you're able to make those kind of decisions about a painting. You're really relating to the viewer. What do you want the viewer to see? Guide the viewer, guide their eye. Another point that I really enjoyed was when he said, let yourself study. Dive deep into that painting. Study what you want it to do. Study not only that, but also study what others are doing, artists that have come before. Just study. It's a very satisfying thing to do. We live in a world where everything is so fast paced. It's extreme this, intense that. And the movies that you watch, they're frenetic. They're just fast and they're loud and they're in your face. And painting isn't necessarily that. It can be, and some artists do that, but I prefer the slower pace, contemplative pace of a painting. In the demonstration, he actually did two paintings. So there was this mountain scene here, but you've noticed he kind of switched it up. He got halfway through the mountain painting and started this really nice snow scene. And this is the study. You can see it. It was a wide aspect ratio study, and then he converted it, interestingly enough, into a 4:3 aspect ratio. I think that's like a 16:20, or I don't remember the size. I think it's 16:20, something like that. And then toward the end of the demonstration, he went back to the mountain scene and finished it up. And I love looking at an artist's palette when it's done. Look at this. He uses Vasari paints. They're extremely expensive, but they look very luscious. So it's a high quality paint that he prefers to use. He also has collaborated with Vasari to pre-mix some of the grays that he would normally manually mix, but now they're available. You can buy these. I've never tried them. Maybe one day I'll order a set and see how they compare to Gamblin, Holbein, and some of the other Grumbacher and Winsor & Newton that I've used. One other thing about this demonstration, this is the audience. Do you notice anything missing here? Anything stand out in your mind? Yeah, there's no young people here. They're all silver-haired like me. While I was there, he released a new book. It's called Selected Works. It's a beautiful book. I've tried to buy some of his older books, but they're just entirely too expensive. You can find them on eBay and AbeBooks and places like that. But people are asking $200, $300, $400, $500 for those, and that's just I can't bring myself to spend that kind of money for a book. And after the workshop, he graciously took the time to meet each of us and sign our books. And this is just a few pages from there. This painting here was on display at the booth. Incredibly thick. I was just amazed at how thick the paint is applied in that particular painting. Of course, there you can see some of the Vasari paints. It's only one of the I think it's the end plate of the book, but you get an idea of the paints that he uses there. So I'm not doing this in order. So that was Scott Christensen's demo. A few days prior to that, I went to Christine Lashley's demo. This was sponsored by the Olmsted Plein Air Invitational, and this was on a Tuesday morning that I went to this. She's a really good artist. She works both in watercolors and water soluble paints, and they're just really nice. We watched her take a painting and took a photo that she had and bring it to life. There was one point where we all kind of gasped because the painting went from just being, abstracted shapes into something that looked like, it became a painting. It was beautiful. So, but there was that transformative moment that happened there. It was just, it took our breaths away when it happened. So she's very good artist. I'm going to try to get her on the Artful Painter podcast. She does have a small book. It's called Christine Lashley, Light in the Landscape. I bought it. It covers a number of different styles that she does. Let me see here. Let me look at my copy. Rivers and lakes, ocean and estuary, gardens and water, and town and country. So that's a nice mix of genre there. That's the back cover of the book. She also I mentioned earlier, she also works in watercolor. Now, the other thing that happened that same week is I went to an opening by John Cleveland. I'd not ever heard of John Cleveland before, but I'm glad I went to this event. And I met the artist, got to talk to him a little bit. And I'll tell you what I'm going to do. Let me get out of this. I'm going to show you a little video clip where the director of the Booth Museum, he introduces John Cleveland. So I'll play a little clip there. Let me pull that up real quick.
Welcome, welcome. Happy New Year. I'm glad to have you at the Booth Western Art Museum and our first opening of the year. Woo! And first and foremost, I want to thank Kyle Russell for championing John's work to us and having.
I'm going to pause it there. So that's John Cleveland there in the brown, and you can see the scale of the paintings. They're quite large.
His work shown here locally at the Bartow History Museum, where we got a chance to enjoy it and talk to him about doing a show here with us of some of his great Western works. And so we are appreciative to Kyle and others in our community who bring artists to our attention, particularly those in our backyard. One of the coolest things we think the Booth Museum has been able to do over the last 15 years is give Georgia artists who do things Western, at least as part of their oeuvre, a place to show their work. And that's been few and far between for some of those artists. And that's too bad, because we really enjoy getting to see work like this done by local or regional artists here in Georgia. So we started this series 15 years ago, doing at least one Georgia artist a year and trying to get their work out to the public without them having to go out to Sheridan, Wyoming or Durango, Colorado to have a place to show. So I've asked John to just talk about a few of these pieces around the room.
All right, so I didn't record all of that. I was just using my iPhone to get that. But John went on to give quite an interesting discourse about his work. So let me switch back over to his some pictures I took of his paintings there. Let me go back into Keynote here where I've got all these images. So this painting here, you saw it behind Seth Hopkins there when he was doing that video or doing that introduction of John Cleveland. It's called I can't see it. Let Me Carry You. That's it. Let Me Carry You. A very beautiful painting, and it does invite you to ask questions like, where does that go? If you walk across, wade through the water and up that hill, where does it go? Where is it? Where is this place? And one of the things you'll notice on these paintings, or you won't notice, is his signature. He says, I don't put my signature on my paintings. I do not want to take the viewer out of the image. A signature converts the image to a painting. I thought that was a very interesting take on the whole idea of whether or not you sign your work. Now, I don't know how collectors may feel about that, but I get his point. It's the images are completely devoid of his signature. This is a point that he made, and I think it's evident in his paintings. He says a painting should make a viewer curious, ask a question, and that's exactly what you do. For example, this is a large painting that's called, and again, I can't see it because I've got an overlay on it. Let me get out of that. It's called Just Standing Still. Now, when you look at this, and if you're not aware of the title, you think, well, where is this place? It's a vast open place, a prairie. And then you see the two white tombstones. And so the question I would ask, or I ask, is, well, where is this? What is this? Who are the people that these graves represent? What happened to them? Well, as it turns out, this is the field upon which the Battle of the Little Bighorn took place. Custer's last stand, as it's sometimes referred to. What a sad story. Both, and it's just a heinous massacre here, and it makes you wonder what went through these men's minds and what did they go through. How did they feel as they were experiencing this? And then, the painting itself is timeless, quite beautiful. One of my favorite paintings. He said another point that he makes, and he tries to do with his paintings, is when he says, when you see something in a painting that you miss, it stirs a sense of nostalgia. And I think that's evident in this painting. This is probably my favorite painting in the display. It's called the Union Pacific Sapphire. It's just a train, but notice it's a square format painting. It's a very large painting, and it does instill in me a sense of, or invokes a feeling of nostalgia. When I was a child, I loved trains, and even to this day, I still like trains. It's an amazing way of getting around the country. So, anyway, I like this painting. One thing he said I thought was very poignant. He said 4 years ago, he was describing something he went through. He said he had a panic attack. Essentially, the panic attack was, I'll never finish all the art I want to do. And I think that's true of a lot of artists. We don't want to stop. And yet, in our current state, imperfect humans that we are, we get old and we die. Alan Bean, the astronaut of one of the astronauts of Apollo 12, he had that sense of urgency. There's a story where a researcher wanted some of his time to help solve a mystery about, I don't even remember what it was, but he needed to interview Alan Bean. And so Alan Bean did give him the time, but at the end of that discussion, he said, don't ever call me again. And the reason was he only had a limited amount of time to finish the paintings that he wanted to do. Whether he finished them or not, I don't know. I'm not a real fan of this phrase bucket list. A lot of people use it. These are the things they've got to do before they die. I don't like to think that way. I don't think we were created that way. And I don't mean to get all religious or anything like that, but it did remind me of a proverb that's found in Ecclesiastes, where it says, He has made everything beautiful in its time, speaking of the Creator. He says He's even put eternity in their heart, and yet mankind will never find out the work that the true God has made from start to finish. And I think that's where that angst comes from, that John Cleveland spoke about. One other footnote about his work: I love the frames that he made. These are made out of angle iron, so they're very affordable, very large, and they look really sharp on his paintings. So I thought that was interesting. Okay, so that's the demos and workshops and openings that I attended. Scott Christensen, Christine Lashley, and John Cleveland. Just a couple of updates here in my studio. I am recording new episodes. I have recorded new episodes of The Artful Painter. I hope to start releasing those new episodes beginning next week. In one of my interviews, one of the artists I spoke with, Gregory Packard, we shared a mutual admiration of artist Dan McCaw, and we both happen to have this book. If you can find this book affordably, I highly encourage you to get it. It's not a cheap book anymore. It's hard to find. I think the prices are ranging anywhere from $80 to $150 dollars on eBay, which $150 is a lot for a book. $80, it's a bit of a stretch, but is it worth it? Yeah, it is. It's a beautiful book. It's called A Proven Strategy for Creating Great Art by Dan McCaw, and this is just one of the examples of his paintings, which I absolutely love. And he really breaks down his painting process, how he develops his ideas, how he mixes colors, and his approach to designing a painting. Oh, you may be wondering, what does a toggle switch have to do with anything in art? Well, the other day I dug out an old pair of speakers that I've had for nearly 35 years, and they've been in storage, I guess, for the last 20 years. But they're these KLH Model 17 speakers. I know your eyes are glazing over at this point, but these are some of the sweetest sounding bookshelf speakers that you can get. I love these speakers. They're old and they're looking a little worse for the wear. They've got a patina on them now, but they still sound great. So that was a project I did last week. No, not that. It was this week, actually. I created a switcher so I could switch between different sets of speakers, but I've got these wired up in my studio because I love to listen to particularly ambient style music while I'm painting. It's there's no words in the music. It's just a sonic soundscape as I paint, and I find that restful. And I would be curious, you could put in the comments below, what do you listen to as you paint? Well, that's a wrap. This is the third attempt at doing this live stream. Let me get out of this, go back to my camera so I can see you face to face there. Yeah, this has been fun. I appreciate you bearing with me through this learning process of doing live streaming. It's a feature I want to do more and more on my YouTube channel. I like producing the more polished videos. I think they're actually my favorites, but sometimes it's good to be able to do these live streams. I hope as my audience builds up, we can have some more interaction. I'll give you a little bit more notice that I'm coming on. I'm appearing live here on YouTube, but I was not too concerned about that. Frankly, I didn't really want a whole lot of people watching this as I worked out the bugs. I've already, like I said, this is the third one that I've done, and the first two did not go very well, but it did give me an opportunity to rehearse what I wanted to say. So that's the good thing about that. So anyway, you know what to do. Subscribe, hit the bell notification. That way you won't miss the live stream notifications. And in the near future, I will try to send out an advance notice to my subscribers so that you know that it's coming and you can participate, share your comments, or ask questions. I don't necessarily know the answers to these things because I'm a beginning painter. I'm learning how to do this, but I will share with you what I learned, and we can go on this journey together. So thank you for listening. This is The Artful Painter. Go out there and create something amazing.